giving a beep, but they have a satellite link as well. So actually by looking at internet here, I can get the lion locations in Gir on my computer. So the lion has a GPS in its collar as well, because it's a big animal, you can afford to put a little more weight. On the fox, it's too big a weight to put on. Normally you can put a collar which is about 1% of the body weight of the animal. It doesn't have any ill effects on the animal. If you put too much weight, then of course there's a problem. Yeah? Imagine carrying a backpack to your college every day which weighs 10 kilos. You can't live with it, right? You can bring it to maybe your classes and then drop it there and take it back. But imagine putting it on your back for 24 hours throughout your life. Not possible. But you can always wear a wristwatch. Okay? And after 2-3 days, it's not going to have any effect on you. You'll think it's a part of your body. The same thing with these radio collars. So if the weight is right, the animals get used to it, it doesn't affect them at all. It becomes a part of their body. But these transmitters give you a lot of information. For example, how often do lions make kills? What are the rates of conflict with human beings? How often do they kill wild prey? How often do they kill domestic prey? Crucial, because the government has to pay compensation. Every time a lion kills a cow, you need to shell out money. And sometimes people just lie through their nose. They say, my 10 cows were killed by lions. When it's just probably one. Okay? So these kinds of techniques allows you to authenticate claims and understand the ecology of an animal. Now this is the landscape of Gir. This is the Gir sanctuary over here, and these are the different home ranges of lions which have been put with radio tags on them. You can see the lions outside. This is Savarkunda here, Palitana here. These lions have got huge ranges, about 1,000 square kilometers each. One lion is using such a big area. And the lionesses inside the park, they're using only 50 square kilometers, which tells us that when food is abundant, their home ranges are small. And when food is scarce, they need large areas to survive in. So these are some of the aspects which you can study as wildlife biologists. On tigers, when you put similar collars, this is Kanha Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh, and this is Finch Tiger Reserve in Madhya Pradesh. And it's connected by a thin, narrow, forested chicken neck corridor. Okay, now this corridor is under a lot of stress, a lot of development activities. They want it for mining, coal mining, want to make roads on it, and so forth. So I put out around collars in about 15 tigers in this park to find out how they move across the landscape. And one of the tigers made this perilous journey into Pench. So we knew that this small link of forest is very crucial for connecting these two populations, genetic linkage between these two populations. Because gene flow from one population to the other is essential to prevent inbreeding. Okay? Breeding between relatives. If that happens, then you have depression in the gene pool, and then evolutionary processes deteriorate, animals are prone to diseases and eventual extinction. So you need exchange of genetic material between large populations to make them viable for the long term. And these corridors or forest linkages are essential. Now based on this research, there was a highway here which connects the town of Jabalpur to the town of Nagpur. Nagpur in Maharashtra, Jabalpur in Madhya Pradesh. This highway, government wanted to make it into a 4-lane highway. And when we presented this research to the central government, they stopped that highway from becoming a 4-lane highway. So the government of India is very, very open for good scientific information which can assist them in doing conservation. But the problem is, very little scientific information is currently available with us to actually claim, most of it is hearsay. You just can't go and say, no, please stop this because we think so. You need to present them with actual concrete scientific data, then people can take action. So this research itself stopped this highway from becoming, and the highway is built till here, and the highway is built to here, but this area, they're not making it a 4-lane highway. Another part of technology which is available today is what is called a recapture technology. Okay? In this, you see this hyena is with a radio collar, but it has 2 capsules on its neck. These capsules are remote injections. Okay? Now, what happens is, when you want to do research, which you do in the laboratory, you want to find out how much energy does a rat require. You put it in a calorimeter and you let it breathe and do some exercises, and you measure the amount of oxygen which goes in and carbon dioxide which comes out. And then you can understand how much of energy it is expending. But this recapture technology allows you to take this research out into the wild, where you actually can study how animals survive in their natural environments. Okay? Because when I press a switch here, 5 days later, when I want to catch this animal again, it will inject that dart and the animal will go down wherever it is. And I have a tag on it, I can go and recapture it and do what I want. So it allows you to recapture an animal remotely. So with this, what I'm doing here is, I'm dosing these hyenas with stable isotopes. You know isotopes? What are isotopes? Louder. Same atomic weight, but what? Same atomic number or same atomic weight? Number. Okay. So these are isotopes, stable isotopes which are not radioactive. Okay. So this is deuterium and O18. Both are not radioactive. They are used for research even on children. So what happens is when deuterium in the form of heavy water and O18 in the form of water again, both are heavy, you dose this animal with doubly labeled water. It's called doubly labeled water. Now over time, as days go by, okay, deuterium is lost as water. Okay, because you evaporate, water evaporates as urine and as sweat and so forth, and O18 is lost as carbon dioxide as well as water, right, from the body. So if you look at the rate of loss of the two, the difference between these two is carbon dioxide production. Okay, so by looking at the slopes of these lines and the differential rates of loss from the body, you can actually estimate carbon dioxide production by animals. And this is possible only when you can capture that same animal in the wild over and over again. So imagine, instead of doing a laboratory experiment, doing such experiments with free-ranging animals. And this is possible today with the technology which is available to us. We also do a lot of reintroductions. You know, poachers wiped off 2 tiger populations in India. One was in Sariska and the other one was in Panna. Both parks, one is in Rajasthan, the other one is Panna. So it was our job from the Wildlife Institute to repopulate these animals. So we have to catch tigers from one site, put them in a helicopter, translocate them and release them. So this is restoration ecology, which is one aspect of conservation biology which people like us need to practice. Now I am responsible for one more project, that is trying to bring back the cheetah into India. Okay, the cheetah has become extinct in India. It was the last cheetah was shot off in 1958 in the state of Chhattisgarh, now the state of Chhattisgarh. Now the government of India thought that it is our job to bring back what we have lost in the recent past. So we are trying to bring back the cheetah from Africa because there is no Asiatic cheetah left. There is a small population in Iran, but it's very small, maybe about 30 to 50 individuals, and we can't get them from there. So we're going to bring back the cheetah from Namibia, and we'll have to bring them, put them back. So we had actually considered one of the sites in Kutch, in the Bunny area of Bunny grasslands in Kutch, to bring this, but the Bunny grasslands are so degraded with a lot of babul, you know, the Dando Bawal, yeah, which has totally taken over the whole landscape of Bunny. So it's not a good area for bringing in the Bunny. So we are considering one near Jaisalmer over here, then another one near Gwalior in Madhya Pradesh, and a third site in Nauradevi, which is also in Madhya Pradesh. So this year, hopefully, the cheetah will be back into India, and the government of India is going to spend close to about 300 crores in bringing this animal back into the country. Another aspect which conservation biologists need to deal with is human-wildlife conflict. Okay? You know, large predators, they eat human beings. Okay? Not normally, but sometimes. So one has to be careful that you have certain areas set aside where no people live, okay? Like our national parks. You need to move the people out of our national parks. Then you have the buffer zones or sanctuary areas where people and wildlife both live together. But you have to bring in a balance. How do you bring in this balance? Whenever there is a problem animal, you need to go and capture it or remove it, shoot it, tranquilize it, whatever else. And there are certain areas like Rajkot city where you don't want lions moving around in the streets, right? Obviously not. So there are certain zones which you need to manage. And as wildlife professionals, you need to make sure that if a lion comes from Gir on the outskirts of Rajkot, you need to capture it and take it back. Okay? So this is conflict management. And many barriers are available, many different research technologies are available, for example, electric fencing, capturing and so forth. Otherwise you have conflicts like this, where the people and the animals both lose out. Because this guy, if he turns around, he's going to kill one or two people for sure. Okay? So you don't want situations like this to come up. Another aspect is we have research projects in our marine biodiversity. You've gone to the Gulf of Kutch. There's a nice, very nice marine sanctuary there. The Gulf of Mannar has another one. So they were going to deepen this channel here so that ships would pass between, they would not have to go around Sri Lanka, but they could go through our Gulf of Mannar. But it's a very important site for biodiversity. So after the study, the government of India decided that we are not going to open this for ship traffic, because once we open this, we're going to lose out on all this biodiversity. So this research actually stopped this channel from being widened, and large ships still cannot fly across. They have to go around Sri Lanka. But